Good morning, spiritual artists. This is CJ Miller, your host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast and your guide through the Doodle Book Club. Guess what? Today is the last day of the Doodle Book Club. You made it. You achieved doing something on a regular basis every morning as a spiritual, artistic practice. And I'll tell you what, when you get past that number, I think it's around 19. When you do something that many days in a row, it becomes a habit. You have developed a new habit of being a spiritual artist. So let's begin with the spiritual artist we are designed to create, the last chapter. This is my book by Christopher J. Miller. The book is available on Amazon.com. You can purchase your own copy or share it with friends. Let's begin with chapter 24, or rather the epilogue. And afterwards, I invite you to hold in because I'm going to share a special prize for you because you managed to do this every day. So rest assured, it'll be announced at the end of this episode. Quote, "You rest now. Rest for longer than you're used to resting. Make a stillness around you, a field of peace. Your best work, the best time of your life, will grow out of this peace. Peter Heller," end quote. So this is the epilogue, ideally chapter 24, fallow time. It's been several months since I finished my first book, The Spiritual Artist. It wasn't long after completing the book that I began questioning myself. Did I share all the lessons that I learned as a spiritual artist? Did I miss any critical aspects of my journey? What was to become of this specific spiritual artist? It was a grand journey, and I knew that I had achieved an incredible milestone by writing my first book. But what next? As I shared my concerns with a good friend, she clarified my experience. "You're going through a fallow time," she said. She further explained, quote, "A fallow time comes before the spring or after the fall. It is both the beginning and the end." I agreed with her realization, but still found myself struggling to move on to my next creative project. Little did I realize that sometimes we simply need to be at rest. Let me explain. As the holiday season approached, I was invited to a labyrinth walk on the winter solstice. My friend invited a small group of people to celebrate the winter solstice, walking a labyrinth located in a Catholic church's courtyard. Winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, according to our calendar. For those who aren't aware, a labyrinth walk is a meditative process that involves walking along a twisting maze-like path that circles ever inward to a middle meeting spot. While there are no walls like a maze, the walking path twists and turns within itself, and the meditator cannot discern a specific direction at any given time. As the walker focuses on staying within the path, he or she has the opportunity to reflect upon their life. It's a meditative process. Each walker received a small battery-powered candle and was directed to walk single file through the labyrinth. Our voices lowered as we began the journey. Due to the nature of the path, we are forced to walk alone. I want to read that again. Due to the nature of the path, we are forced to walk alone. According to writer and Episcopal priest Lauren Altris in her book, Walking a Sacred Path, Rediscovering the Labyrinth as a Spiritual Practice. The labyrinth is a tool for spiritual transformation, but its origination is still unknown. At the same time, signs of labyrinth usage date back to ancient Rome. It's important to understand that a labyrinth is distinctly different from a maze. A maze is designed with many different paths and choices that confuse the walker, whereas a labyrinth is created with one specific course followed in one direction to the center and out again. Artris believes that the labyrinth is designed to help us reconnect to the spirit that enlivens us. I had only walked a labyrinth one or two times in my life. Whether it was the crisp winter air or the sparkling stars above, I began the path in solid stride. But within one or two turns, I noticed anxiety building in my chest. My mind, constrained to the boundaries of the trail, began jumping from thought to thought. Was I walking fast enough to stay ahead of the person behind me? Or was I walking too fast? What if I had accidentally strayed from the path and found myself turned around? Was I walking in the right direction? What if I became disoriented and ran into someone head on? I realized that the labyrinth symbolized life itself. We often feel frightened and confused. We often think that we have strayed from our path. This ancient ritual was a metaphor for life's journey, and what seemed like a simple meditative walk represented something much more significant. I gave myself over to my fears. Yes, I had written a book, but where do I go now? Would the book even sell? Should I go back and promote my art? How would I be able to pay my bills? As I processed my thoughts, I could hear the church choir practicing inside the sanctuary. Their beautiful voices floated in the air as the bells in the steeple chimed, and I continued walking. In her book, Arches explains one of the vital meditative principles behind a labyrinth. Quote, the labyrinth can be a tremendous help in quieting the mind because the body is moving. Movement takes away the excess charge of psychic energy that disturbs our efforts to quiet our thought processes. Walking the labyrinth is a body prayer. It is non-threatening. All we are asked to do is to walk. Even those of us with the deepest inner divisions can do that. Moving through the labyrinth, we can learn what it feels like to stand firm in the world. We sense our feet firmly planted on the ground, our legs, pelvis, torso, arms, neck, and head flowing with energy and life. End quote. As my body continued taking deliberate steps, I noticed that my mind quieted. I found myself exhaling an enormous sigh of relief. Some innate intelligence in my body took control of the situation and guided me along the path. The North Star appeared clearly in the night sky for the first time in many years. My fears quieted as I noticed the simple beauty of the world around me. The lyrics floated down upon me. All was calm. All was bright. I didn't know what I would achieve, but I did recognize the importance of this ritual and the importance of body meditation. Winter is a literal time of rest, a time when the field has been stripped and the ground lays fallow. Fallow time is the ideal time to walk a labyrinth, for it represents a time of rest and rejuvenation, a time to quiet our minds. Fallow time is when we recognize and nurture creative intelligence within. In this place of rest and renewal, we recharge our creative faculties. We lie in wait for a new creative impulse to spring forth. Creativity is not just the act of producing. Sometimes it's discovered in the process of resting. Let me repeat that. Creativity is not just the act of producing. Sometimes it's discovered in the process of rest. The book of Genesis addresses the concept of a fallow time. Quote, and on the seventh day, God rested, end quote. The guidance for us to cease our work and rest is not meant to be strictly enforced by a firm doctrine, but is a recommendation on the creative process. The creative process requires rest, a time when spirit percolates before the blossoming of spring. Are you permitting a fallow time in your creative process, or do you constantly push yourself to be productive? The spiritual artist recognizes a need for releasing their physical efforts and practicing presence in the moment. As I exited the labyrinth, I reflected on the many messages received during my walk. And so I begin my second book at the end, realizing that there is no true beginning or end to the creative process, simply times of rest and times of motion. Even in fallow times, we are never without creative intelligence. After I calmed my fears while walking the path, I remembered the most important lesson from my first book. I recognized that I didn't need any person, place, or thing for my spiritual connection. My primary task is to practice conscious connection to creative intelligence throughout the day. As individualized intelligence, I process the tools I need within. As I walked and accepted the many lessons of the labyrinth, I was uncertain as to what my next project would be, but I knew that Spirit would lead me. This is a delightful end to the whole book, and I'm glad I shared it with you. What it reminds me of, and what I really like, even upon reading, I learn something new every time I reread this, is that there is the aspect of walking. We simply walk forward, and in a labyrinth, which represents life, we simply take the next step. That is all you are required to do. Keep walking forward, keep being creative. And what I want you to understand, what I actually see that I was saying here, even better than when I wrote it, I think, which is odd, is that you are guided. I want to remind you that creative intelligence is guiding you. The path is only one way. Do you hear that? This is not a maze. A maze is something where there's a minotaur, and you're confused and you're walking around and you're afraid. A labyrinth is a guided direction in one way. And that is what's so key to understand in this chapter. You are guided. Creative intelligence has put a unique individualization in you. There is an intelligence of being in you that is like no other person, place, or thing. And if you simply walk forward and authentically communicate that creative intelligence, it will guide you through this whole journey and back again. Understanding that creative intelligence is guiding you and leading you to the proper, perfect expression of your individualizedness. Doesn't that Ah, doesn't that take a little stress away? Doesn't that give you a sense of relief knowing that everything was going in order? Your tool is to align with spirit, listen and align and flow. So fallow time. And also take breaks. It's important not to push too hard and take breaks. On that note, I want to thank you for taking this journey with me through this Doodle Book Club. It was an inspiration that I received. I loved it. I loved getting your feedback on each chapter. Um, and so your prize, there's a special prize here that I want to share with you. I wanted to show that I do appreciate you. I appreciate my listeners and people that have followed me, people that come to my spiritual art retreats. So if you go to my website, Spiritual Artist Today, there is a subpage called Doodle Book Club. And on that page, if you register with your email and mailing address, I will mail you a free 4x6 matted print of one of my pieces, one of my paintings. That's a free print. And I want to thank you so much for participating. Now, special note, if you're out of the country, if you're not in the continental United States, it's too expensive for me to mail a print, but what I'd like to offer you is a discount. So check it out. You can also get a discount for one of my retreats if you're out of the country. This has to be registered for by the end of Thursday, June 27th, which is the last day of the Doodle Book Club campaign. So please go on there, do it right away, register and fill out your information, and know that you will get onto my newsletter list and you will get my occasional newsletter talking to you about new interviews and my upcoming book. So I am starting to churn the ideas for the next book. So I want to thank you and thank you with some of my art. Thank you for being a spiritual artist. And please stay tuned to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Make sure you're following me on a Spotify or one of the directories or YouTube or both, depending on your needs. And I will talk to you soon. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have on any of these concepts. I love to chat. Have a great day and know that you are a spiritual artist.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.